The following movie is rated R.
In the last 5 years, boxing has managed to deliver the best fights. But in boxing's premier division, the most important bout failed to materialize. For some, the maniacal Tyson Fury remained the lineal champion. His road had been a rocky one. After beating Vladimir Klitschko in an overly tactical 2015 bout, Fury embarked on a drug and alcohol-fueled 2-year retirement. Then, he returned in 2018 and gave the power-punching Deontay Wilder a boxing lesson, only to be shafted on the scorecards via dubious draw. At the same time, Anthony Joshua, another Brit, had picked up the mantle of heavyweight supremacy. However, Joshua would lose his undefeated record against Andy Ruiz in 2019. And though he avenged his loss later that year, some saw him as a glass giant, while Fury, he who rose from knockdowns effortlessly, was seen as a mentally tougher contender. In early 2020, Fury resumed his business with Wilder. The American barked confidently, but Fury remained focused on the task at hand. And on fight night, he performed a demolition job on his opponent that was mercifully stopped in the 7th round. Fury was now a multi-dimensional boxer, and the performance earned him Fighter of the Year honors. Anthony Joshua was the next logical foe, but a new challenger emerged in the form of the Ukrainian, Alexander Usyk. In 2018, Usyk had cleared the cruiserweight division, beating all the major contenders, and did so while retaining his undefeated record. In 2019, he moved up to the heavyweight division. His introduction was a harsh one, not in the ring, but outside it, as multiple fights fell through. His first bout was mundane, as he easily dispatched of late replacement Chaz Witherspoon. In 2020, he fought perennial contender Derek Chisora. Outweighed by 36 pounds, Usyk relied on his skill and stamina to outbox his earth-seen foe. But for many, Usyk had failed to impress, and he was seen as being too small and too light a puncher to challenge the behemoths atop the division. In 2021, Usyk faced Anthony Joshua and proved too skilled and conditioned as he outboxed Joshua en route to a unanimous decision. That same year, Fury had to conclude matters with Deontay Wilder after a saga in which Fury was accused of cheating against his American opponent. Fury was forced into a rubber match. Fury dropped Wilder early in the bout, but suffered a scare midway through as he twice tasted the canvas. Other than that, Fury mangled Wilder en route to an 11th round stoppage. Now, a 2022 Usyk-Fury match for all the titles was a must. Usyk, however, involved himself in the Ukraine-Russian conflict and was out of commission for the early part of the year. Fury, meanwhile, took on contender Dillian Whyte. Fury easily handled the veteran, too elusive and too accurate. He concluded matters with a 6-round stoppage. Suddenly, Fury announced his retirement. Few believed it. Fury spent the ensuing months changing his mind, kicking taxicabs, as well as picking a fight with strongman competitor Hafthor Bjornsson. Usyk, meanwhile, was contractually obligated to rematch Joshua in August 2022. The bout proved more complicated, with Usyk having to weather Joshua's heavy body blows. In the end, Usyk emerged victorious and set his eyes on Tyson Fury. But the Brit had been eyeing Derek Chisora for an unnecessary third bout. The insistence rubbed fans the wrong way, especially when Fury proceeded to offer Joshua a fight right after the Usyk rematch, giving his fellow Brit mere weeks to prepare. In the end, Fury took on Chisora and had no trouble stopping his familiar foe. The most exciting part of the event occurred when Fury and Usyk came face to face.
I'm gonna write you off, you ugly little man! You ugly little man!
But 2023 would devolve into a string of drama as negotiations consistently faltered. Month by month, it became clear that Fury's side were to blame for the delays. In the end, both fighters went their separate ways late in 2023. Usyk took on Daniel Dubois, another giant Brit who years earlier had been groomed for stardom, before losing to Joey Joyce by stoppage. Usyk outboxed Dubois, but the Brit scored a low blow that some fans believed to be a legitimate body shot. In any event, the referee ruled it low, and Usyk proceeded to drop and stop Dubois. Fury, however, was unconvinced and insisted that not only had Dubois' infamous punch been legal, but that Usyk was weak as well. In time, however, Fury would encounter his own controversy. Much to fans' chagrin, Fury decided to fight former UFC heavyweight champion and boxing novice Francis Ngannou for a big money fight. What was supposed to be an easy fight turned into a nightmare for Fury as the rookie proceeded to drop him in a fight that went the distance. It was bad enough that Fury had wasted fans' time with an exhibition fight, but the fact that he'd failed to convincingly beat Ngannou now proved an embarrassment for the sport. Once again, Fury and Usyk faced off, but contrary to their 2022 meeting, Fury lacked his previous confidence. With Saudi money backing the event, Fury and Usyk finally agreed to fight, and suddenly, Fury rediscovered his courage.
Yous are all dossers. He's getting knocked out. I'm gonna bust him. Sausage, ugly little man, rabbit. He's like a little pussy with an earring in. Shit house.
But if boxing fans thought they would get the fight without any hiccups, they were wrong. Early in 2023, Fury announced that he'd been caught in sparring. He would have to delay the bout. Footage, which appeared to have been filmed with a phone from 2005, emerged, allegedly showing Fury being cut. Fans analyzed the video extensively, and many doubted that Fury had been struck at all. Thus, Fury had faked the injury. But Turki Al-Sheikh, the man funding the event, rescheduled the fight and asserted that the boxers would be fined $10 million if they delayed the bout. In the build-up to the event, both men traded barbs. Fury was his usual boorish self, while Usyk remained enigmatic. Fury even went as far as criticizing Usyk's choice of accessories.
I know he can't beat me. A man who wears an earring in his ear can never beat Tyson Fury. Ever.
And of course, on fight week, Tyson's father, convicted felon John Fury, had to steal the show. Fury then assaulted a member of Usyk's entourage, unprovoked, but only managed to cause damage to himself.
Let me beat nowhere we go!
What sparked the confrontation? Them coming into your space?
Yeah, coming into my space. Usyk. Nobody's bothering with them. I was only chanting my own son's name, so they got step closer and step closer.
Shockingly, John Fury was not kicked out of the country. Interestingly enough, many fans picked Usyk to win, and many made it seem as if all Usyk had to do was to show up and win. Many of these picks were made on the basis of Fury's horrible performance against Ngannou. However, despite Fury's assertion that he trained hard for that bout, his body, which had been fatter than usual, had told a different story. Obviously, he would train harder for the Usyk bout. Another factor swaying boxing fans' minds was a realization that Fury's win over Wilder had been overrated, as the American only had a big right hand. However, Fury proved a highly elusive fighter when he wanted to be, or he could use his considerable size to wear down opponents. Moreover, standing officially at a reported 6 feet 9 inches tall, compared to Usyk's 6 feet and 3 inches, Fury had a height, reach, and weight advantage. If Usyk was to win, he would have to push himself like never before. Usyk began by pecking away at Fury's body. Fury clowned, but his fun was cut short. Still, he remained elusive. Usyk continued pressuring. In the fifth, Fury landed vicious body punches as Usyk pressed on. Usyk continued advancing in the sixth. His plan clearly intended to fatigue Fury. The Brit was enjoying the bout, and now his size was proving an advantage. Fired up, Fury carried the momentum in the seventh. But in the eighth, Usyk powered up, catching his second wind. Suddenly, he was punching with conviction, and near the end of the round, he injured Fury. Fury battled through a bloody nose in the ninth, but he was slowing down, and Usyk took advantage.
And these guys are not letting us start. Fury's in trouble. The big fella, the Gypsy King, is rattled. He's stumbling through the ring. Do you believe it? Do you believe it?
Looking like it was Friday night at the pub, Fury stumbled to his corner. But Fury, infamous for his recuperative powers, survived the 10th. As usual, Usyk rallied his energy in the championship rounds. Fury survived, but in the end, Usyk grabbed all the belts via split decision. Such was his team's elation that they refreshed everyone in the ring, free of charge.
Over. Like I said, I believe I won the fight, but I'm not going to sit here and cry and make excuses. It was a good fight. Thank you.
Alexander.
An emotional Usyk dedicated his victory to his late father, while Fury spoke of geopolitical intrigue.
We both put on a good fight, best we could do, and you know, his country's at war, so people are siding with the country at war, but make no mistake, I won that fight in my opinion.
There was a rematch clause in place, but strangely, the second bout was set for December, about 6 months after the first fight. Days after the fight, Fury was spotted outside a bar. Was he inebriated or simply reenacting the 9th round of the Usyk bout for his friends? Either way, many fans doubted whether Fury would make it to the rematch. In the rematch's build-up, Fury insinuated he'd prepared improperly for the first bout. Andy Lee, one of his trainers, clarified the statement, claiming that Fury's cut had prevented him from sparring for the first bout. Now, they would be fully prepared for Usyk. The Ukrainian, for his part, remained nonchalant and showed up looking like an assassin. Frank Warren, Fury's co-promoter, had the utmost of confidence in his boxer, though he failed to properly choose his words.
Great fighters, and they got big hearts, they got big, everything about them is big. They're big men, they got big hearts, they got big boxing intellect. Everything about them is big.
Fury, who had remained relatively quiet since the first fight, now increased the intensity, with both boxers staring at each other for over 10 minutes. At the weigh-in, Fury showed up at 281 pounds. Despite Fury's increased bulk, Usyk remained in front of him. Fury's shots were heavy, but he landed sporadically, and Usyk's speed and acumen once again proved the difference. Fury picked it up in the middle rounds, but Usyk remained one step ahead. And that was the story of the fight. It lacked the first installment's drama, and Fury's increased bulk slowed him down after the 6th round. In the championship rounds, Fury finally stepped it up, but Usyk kept up with him. Finally, Usyk walked away with a unanimous decision. The verdict was generally accepted by the majority of the world, one exception being Fury's bullet-dodging co-promoter.
I don't know, they weren't looking at what I was looking at. I mean, one judge did not give him 1 round in the last 7. I thought he did enough to win it.
Fury shared the sentiment.
There's no doubt in my mind I won the fight, and that's it.
And according to one reporter, an entire country thought Fury had been robbed.
And at home in Britain, everybody's calling it a massive robbery. So,
What can you do? You get paid, you get laid, that's it. You go home.
Regardless of what the minority thought, Usyk had once again proven he was the best heavyweight in the world. Weeks later, in early 2025, former two-division champion Timothy Bradley caused controversy when he stated that Usyk was not an all-time great heavyweight. Many disagreed, arguing he twice defeated the two best heavyweights of his era while at a size disadvantage. Others turned it into a nationalism issue, claiming Usyk would be more respected if he were an American. Still, as of this January 2025, it is still uncertain what Usyk plans to do. Whatever his future plans, he brought some finality to the most renowned division in boxing.
People were bracing for the end.
When a fighter's career ends, there's a natural propensity to either overrate or underrate his legacy. With heavyweight titleist Deontay Wilder, that process unfolded throughout his prime. Back in 2015, Wilder defeated titleist Bermane Stiverne. There, the tall power puncher managed to outbox his portly foe and establish himself as a top contender. Soon to be 30 years old, Wilder was in a great position. He was fast, tall for the division, and more importantly, he could punch. He notched 6 straight stoppage defenses and garnered a group of fanatics who referred to him as King Deontay Wilder. Mesmerized by his stoppage wins, these fans overlooked Wilder's serious technical flaws, as well as his inability to pressure opponents. By 2018, the undefeated Brit Anthony Joshua had stopped the former champion Vladimir Klitschko and became a national sensation. With wins over contenders Dylan White, Joseph Parker, and Alexander Povetkin, Joshua established himself as the division's next ruler. There were talks of a Wilder-Joshua fight, but they went nowhere. The Wilder fans accused Joshua and his promoter Eddie Hearn of being scared and blamed them for the negotiations' collapse. On top of this, they claimed their man's power would be enough to best Joshua. They also accused the Brit of being mentally weak and a homosexual. Wilder, for his part, encouraged the behavior with his own antics. First, he went racial, and he accused Eddie Hearn of being more than a promoter. There were also a myriad of outside-the-ring antics, such as threatening the wife of future rival Dominic Breazeale, in an incident where Wilder and his posse surrounded the woman and her children. There was also an alleged incident involving assault on a woman. Then, there were the numerous comments in which Wilder stated his wish of wanting to kill someone in the ring.
I don't kill
Pull back a little bit.
Nah, I want a body on my record. I want one.
No, you don't.
I want one. I want one.
He then switched from wanting to take a life to wanting to create one, as he said he wished he could experience childbirth. By the end of 2018, Wilder picked the former champion, Tyson Fury, as his opponent. Fury had taken the championship from Klitschko in 2015, but then retired for 2 years, doing drugs and packing on the pounds. He returned in 2018 and took 2 tune-ups before answering Wilder's calls. In the fight's build-up, Wilder made some wild claims.
People always don't want to bring race in it, but it's very alive, it's real. When you're a black man, it's hard. But when you are outspoken, when people can't control you and string you along, you know, you speak your piece. You're very dominant in what you do and what you say. People don't want to see you succeed like that.
You know we've been fighting 400 and still fighting to this day. To this day. To this day.
He partook in what today's youth refer to as zesty behavior. Was Anthony Joshua really the one with the San Francisco behavior? Wilder spent the majority of the fight being outboxed, his limitations exposed, with the only highlights being 2 knockdowns in his favor. Wilder received a gift draw and moved on to easily dispatch of Breazeale in 2019. He then rematched an old Luis Ortiz. The pair had met in 2018, and Wilder had struggled with the Cuban before bailing himself out via his punching power. In the rematch, Ortiz easily outboxed Wilder, but once again, the American saved himself with a one-punch knockout. The Wilder fans attempted to prop up their man by overrating Ortiz and claimed the Cuban could have easily beaten Joshua. Wilder didn't help matters when he claimed he was superior to Mike Tyson.
My hand speed, I'm too long for one. Too long for one, I'm too tall. My athleticism, my feet work, all that give me an advantage. It plays a big part.
By the summer of 2019, Wilder fans considered him unbeatable. According to them, all he had to do was land one shot, and it was over. Wilder was not only confident, but arrogant, especially as it pertained to his overseas rival, Anthony Joshua. When the Brit boxed his way to a mundane decision over Joseph Parker, Wilder was all too willing to criticize.
Oh my God, my grandma always told me if I ain't had something nice to say then, baby, don't say nothing at all. That's all I'ma say, man, is out. The baddest man in the world, the baddest man on the planet, and that's facts.
The same occurred when Joshua suffered a shocking loss against Luis. Once again, Wilder was quick to pull the trigger.
Joshua coming over here the first time in America, he's been built up and boosted up in height, so big, and to get knocked out like that, man, that's, to me, I would have felt embarrassed.
Tyson Fury, meanwhile, had looked subpar in his last bout against the undefeated Otto Wallin. Finally, Wilder and the Brit agreed to a rematch in early 2020. As usual, Wilder talked a big game.
Being a veteran in this sport, I understand, I know, I have a sixth sense. I know what nervous energy is and what it looks like and what it smells like. Pussy.
Everything the American and his trainer said denoted the fact that they were relying solely on punching power.
Worst thing we could have done is try to reinvent the wheel. We thought we did win, so we're not looking to change everything up. We're just looking to do what we do best.
There was no plan B. Fury, meanwhile, switched trainers and focused on fighting more aggressively. Indeed, Fury proceeded to batter Wilder round after round, dropping him numerous times before Wilder's corner pulled their man out. Wilder's careful matchmaking and limited skills had been exposed. Unable to see their king destroyed, the Wilder fans concocted all manner of excuses, none of which held up under scrutiny, and Wilder soon jumped on the narratives. He also fired Mark Breland, the trainer who had looked out for his health in the Fury rematch. Wilder then hired former victim Malik Scott as his trainer and released videos that pumped up his fan base. In 2021, there were negotiations between Joshua and Fury for a long-anticipated bout, but Wilder's team intervened, citing a rematch clause. The 2020 pandemic, which had delayed a potential rubber match, was used as a reason to annul the contract. But after a series of weird occurrences, a mediator sided with Wilder, and a third Fury fight arrived. Once again, Fury proceeded to demolish Wilder, with the American's only saving grace being 2 knockdowns scored. With his second victory, Fury dealt a death blow to the charges leveled against him by the Wilder fanatics. This had marked the second beatdown Wilder had suffered. Was he finished as a world-class fighter? The American remained idle for a year before returning in October of 2022. There, he faced his former sparring partner, Robert Helenius. And though the counterpunch landed appeared legit, many a fan questioned Helenius' reaction. Perhaps the old Wilder was back. Unfortunately, he remained inactive for another year before returning in late 2023. There, he joined the ambitious new venture, financed by Saudi money, which held a number of megacards per year. Scheduled to fight in the same event was Anthony Joshua, with the intent of matching him with Wilder at a future date. All Wilder had to do was win his own bout, a match against former titleist Joseph Parker. Unfortunately for Wilder, his limitations were once again on display as Parker forced him to retreat throughout the night. There were no jabs from Wilder and no setups. Even his vaunted power failed to surface. Wilder had ruined a future mega fight. Neither Eddie Hearn nor Joshua could be blamed this time. The defeat was especially sour, as Wilder had once mocked Anthony Joshua for going the distance against Parker back in 2018.
Where my bomb squad people at?
Delusional as ever, Wilder claimed he'd heard a rumor stating that Joshua was going to avoid him by retiring after his bout with Wallin on the same card. Apparently, Wilder believed that his wild swings and record-setting bench presses frightened Joshua. In 2024, rival promoters Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren clashed in another Saudi card, which would pit 5 fighters of each stable against one another. Wilder would join Hearn's squad as its captain. This was particularly puzzling, as Wilder had never been a matchroom fighter, and at the height of the Joshua rivalry, had gone as far as accusing Hearn of engaging in human slavery.
I just feel sorry for the fighters that's under their stable, you know what I mean? Because that is his true mindset, to be a slave master. And like I've said it before, that's another thing I've told them. I said them slave masters. And I guarantee you their family was slave masters at one point in time. I guarantee you it.
It seemed as if the human trafficker Hearn had managed to ensnare his chain around Wilder's neck. Wilder fans ignored the past transgressions and rallied around their fighter. Yes, Wilder was in his late 30s, but this was the heavyweight division, where fighters could extend their careers through punching power. And for all his faults, Wilder could still punch. The problem was that so did his next opponent, the Chinese, Zhilei Zhang.
Zhilei Zhang, nigga, 中国人啊!
A 2008 Olympic silver medalist, Zhang had suffered career stagnation due to a myriad of complications. This was a shame, as the Chinese powerhouse possessed solid technique and heavy fists. On top of this, he was a southpaw, but his mismanagement continued across the 2010s and 2020s. In 2022, he returned stronger than ever, taking on the undefeated Filip Hrgović. Despite being older, Zhang dropped his lauded opponent and landed the harder shots. In the end, he suffered a contentious decision defeat. It seemed as if Zhang just couldn't catch a break, and the boxing world did him no favors in 2023 when it matched him against heavyweight boogeyman Joey Joyce. Joyce was a slow but gigantic pressure fighter who picked apart opponents with a heavy jab and non-stop attack. In recent years, he'd taken Daniel Dubois' undefeated record and had become the first man to stop Joseph Parker. But Zhang was unafraid, and he plastered Joyce with bombs, closing Joyce's eye, thus leading to a stoppage. Zhang replicated the performance in a rematch later that year, though this time he knocked out his feared foe. But just as Zhang had finally achieved success, he met Joseph Parker in early 2024. Inexplicably, the Chinese showed up weighing 291 pounds. During the bout, his power was evident, as he twice dropped Parker. But in between, he spent large gaps without throwing blows, choosing instead to defend and chase Parker around the ring. In the end, his inactivity cost him a majority decision. Now, in June 2024, Wilder and Zhang met at a crossroads fight, their careers on the line. The first round was tense, as the fans awaited the first landed blow.
First man to land a big punch may well be the winner.
Wilder landed a good right, and Malik Scott was pleased with his defense.
Good defense. Nice defense.
There was a moment ago.
Wilder fired some shots, but was unable to land. In the second, Zhang continued pressing, and he stunned Wilder. Wilder fought back, but couldn't keep Zhang off of him, and he soon found himself back in a corner. Zhang anticipated where Wilder was turning and met him with a shot. In between rounds, Scott admonished his fighter.
Malik Scott telling Wilder, I don't want you to be a punching bag.
Knowing Wilder was combat ineffective going backwards, Zhang pressured. Wilder fired back in the fourth, but only touched air. In the fifth, Wilder finally landed a good right hand and had Zhang looking perturbed. But just as soon, Zhang returned fire. Inexplicably, Wilder turned away and admonished the referee over something, and then he went away. And with that, Zhang scored a fifth-round stoppage. The Chinese was back and put the heavyweight division on notice. Meanwhile, Wilder had once again shown his lack of ring generalship. After the bout, many a fan and commentator claimed Wilder was shot, unable to pull the trigger like he used to. But rewatching his previous fights, one noticed he would often struggle to let his hands go, and this was against subpar opposition. The reality was that he'd finally stepped up in level, and his many limitations were being exposed. Some fans were despondent, and it was doubtful whether Wilder, at 38 years of age, would return to the ring. But whether one liked or disliked Wilder, one had to admit that the Wilder saga had proved a wild ride. The reputation on boxing fans is that they love to elevate a fighter. That is, until said fighter becomes too successful. Then, the fans enjoy his downfall. Superstar heavyweight Anthony Joshua knew this process all too well. After an early life of crime, the Brit got his act together and quickly rose through the amateur ranks, culminating in an Olympic gold medal at the 2012 Summer Games. With his massive build, Joshua quickly became the darling of the British establishment. He was presented as a clean-cut athlete, in contrast to Tyson Fury, a man who repelled some with his comments and lackadaisical lifestyle. Joshua tore to the heavyweight division, and his quest culminated in 2017 when he defeated the former champion Vladimir Klitschko in a wild slugfest that saw the Brit rise from the canvas and score an 11th-round stoppage. The fight cemented his status as a box office star. But subsequent fights would soon dampen his image, if only slightly. Mundane bouts against Carlos Takam and Joseph Parker made some believe that Joshua lacked a killer instinct. The Brit returned to his power-punching status when he defeated the underrated Alexander Povetkin. But despite the win, Joshua's career was heavily scrutinized, and many pointed out how easily Povetkin was catching him before Joshua's jab and the Russian's age caused Povetkin's demise. In 2019, Joshua followed the trail blazed by the Beatles 55 years earlier as he arrived to the USA. His opponent was the blubbery Jarrell Big Baby Miller. But weeks before the bout, the American tested positive for numerous PEDs. His replacement was another fat foe, the Mexican-American Andy Ruiz. Despite the contrasting physiques, Ruiz proved a menace as he survived a knockdown before rallying back to stop his foe. Worse still, it appeared as if Joshua had quit. But like Lennox Lewis, his British predecessor, Joshua refused to lie down and outboxed Ruiz in the rematch. He then scored an easy win over contender Kubrat Pulev in 2020. The win solidified his hold as a dominant force in the division, but he soon lost it all again when former cruiserweight champion Alexander Usyk nabbed his titles in 2021. By then, Joshua's carefully constructed persona had begun to crack. Back in 2017, Joshua had allegedly sent heavyweight contender Eddie Chambers a derisive message which stated, "Real ones move in silence. You are a bum. Disgrace to the superior black race. F*** you." The reason behind the spat remains unknown. Then, in 2020, Joshua was accused of racism when, during BLM's Summer of Love riots, he declared, "We need to be united in non-violent demonstrations, show them where it hurts, abstain from spending your money in their shops and economies, and invest in black-owned businesses." Perhaps the comments had been taken out of context, but in 2022, Joshua sacked his trainer, Robert McCracken, and chose Robert Garcia. It was common for A-side fighters to change trainers after a defeat, but the move further sullied AJ's reputation after firing his longtime trainer. Then, in the build-up to the Usyk rematch, Joshua revealed the type of man he admired.
Gonna see the raft of the new champ. Different energy, different spirit. We're going back to the raw, rugged streets. That's where I belong. I followed the hustlers, the Rayful Edmond, the Jeff Ports, the Nicky Barnes, the Big Meaches, the Larry Hoovers. It's all or nothing.
However, no amount of gangsterism could help him, as he lost another decision. Once again, Joshua switched trainers, this time to Flavor of the Month, Derek James. Joshua returned in 2023 and failed to hurt or stop the undersized Jermaine Franklin. There, Joshua ate his share of shots and clinched substantially. He even had the gall to pretend that it was Franklin who was responsible for the hugging.
Gotta be careful here. They need to be separated. Continuing. They need to be separated here.
Then he fought Robert Helenius, once again looking flat and sporting a bloody nose, before ending matters with one big blow. Predictably, Joshua switched trainers, this time to the blonde comet, Ben Davidson. For some, Davidson was one of the best up-and-coming trainers. For others, he was a publicity whore, an overrated trainer who was even willing to climb onto the ring throughout fights in order to be seen. Still, Davidson worked whatever system he had on Joshua, and a renaissance occurred. In late 2023, Joshua took on southpaw Otto Wallin. Wallin's only loss had come against Tyson Fury, in a bout in which the Swede had caught Fury with a punch. It was a miracle that neither the doctor nor the referee halted the bout, and Wallin proceeded to make Fury's night a misery. Joshua had no such trouble, as he outboxed Wallin en route to a fifth-round stoppage. Then, in early 2024, Joshua had another chance to upstage Fury, as he took on the man who would ruin the Gypsy's reputation, Francis Ngannou. Joshua showed the boxing world how it's done, as he dominated Ngannou before icing him in the second round. Now, Joshua recaptured his glory, and whatever demons may have ailed him appeared to vanish. By the summer of 2024, Usyk and Fury were set to rematch, and Joshua waited for the winner. Meanwhile, he decided to fight contender Daniel Dubois. Dubois, once seen as a future Joshua, had managed to rack up numerous stoppage wins before encountering Joe Joyce. In the build-up to the fight, Dubois made it personal against Joyce's blind mother.
No, my dear, you know what? I'm going to do you a favor. Because you can't see your son after he's been knocked out, you'll spare the heartache. You'll be spared the heartache.
Ironically, Joyce would smash Dubois' eye socket before halting him late in the fight. Dubois walked away with a fractured orbital bone, as well as egg on his face. Then, in late 2022, Dubois was almost knocked out by the southpaw Kevin Lorena, benefiting from some sly refereeing before halting his foe. This performance failed to inspire the fans as Dubois embarked on a 2023 Usyk bout. With a new trainer, Don Charles, Dubois spoke of winning by any means necessary.
Yeah, hit anything on sight.
How does it play out?
By any means necessary, a win. By any means necessary.
Indeed, he managed to land some low blows, one of which decked Usyk and gave the Ukrainian 5 minutes to recover. Usyk recuperated and stopped Dubois in the 9th round. Dubois' trainer, along with some fans, claimed the blow had been legitimate and that Dubois should have been the champion. But they overlooked the fact that he'd essentially quit again, this time from a jab. Dubois would later say that the referee's decision to rule against him earlier in the fight had deflated him. One wondered how Dubois would succeed as a boxer with such a frail mentality. But much like Joshua, Dubois remained committed to boxing and returned in late 2023 to face Jarrell Big Baby Miller. With renewed character, Dubois preemptively struck against Miller.
Big baby. Every baby has a daddy, and I'm gonna beat you like I'm your daddy.
Even Anthony Joshua caught some charm now.
One thing I can tell you is that after I finish with Dubois, I definitely want Manuel Chark as the goddamn belt. And the AJ don't want no smoke with Deontay.
Shut the f*** up.
And even though...
Start with me, you know.
Even though...
Yeah. Miller, don't start with me.
Even though...
You know, I'll come over there and slap you, and I see you brought your mum here again.
Many expected Miller's durable style to overwhelm Dubois, but the Brit proved consistent throughout the bout. And he managed to score a 10th round stoppage. He then returned in 2024 to take on the undefeated Filip Hrgović. Once again, Dubois was the underdog, and the first few rounds proved correct, as Dubois had no defense for the Croat's straight shots. But little by little, Dubois, with the help of his power and some headbutts, wore Hrgović down, en route to scoring an 8th round stoppage. For the second time in a row, Dubois had defied the odds, but doing so against Joshua seemed too tall a task. Dubois, however, remained confident, and it irked Joshua.
Let's go.
But let's wait till the 21st.
If he wants to swing, go. Let's go now.
Sharp, relax.
If you want to go now, let's
relax.
go. If you want to go
put
now.
This chair across your face. Daniel, don't disrespect me. You can't put this chair across your face. Don't disrespect me.
But after Joshua's recent dominant wins, AJ had reason to be defiant, and many saw him as being too good for Dubois. And much was made of Ben Davidson's importance.
Ben Davison is so analytical. He is the guy that will watch tape on a fighter over and over and over and find the smallest chink in the armor.
Some even went as far as claiming the union transcended the material world.
The coach he's now alighted with, Ben Davison, is right for him mentally, physically, in terms of strategy, maybe even metaphysically.
But there was more at stake than just British bragging rights. Earlier in the year, Joshua's promoter, Eddie Hearn, and Dubois' promoter, Frank Warren, had gone head-to-head in a card that pitted 5 of each man's fighter against the others. Warren swept the series 5-0, including Dubois' win over Hrgović. Now, Hearn had a chance at revenge by pitting his best heavyweight against Dubois. Dubois entered the bout as a 4-1 underdog, but he was 7 years younger at 27 years of age. Well, on top of this, he proved to be the biggest puncher Joshua had faced since Ander Luiz. How would Joshua react to Dubois' arsenal? In front of more than 80,000 fans, Dubois out-jabbed Joshua and struck with ease. Dubois used his head to break Joshua's clinches, but referee and Prince Andrew impersonator Marcus McDonald warned him sternly, shoving Dubois multiple times. It seemed as if he wanted to kick some ass too. Dubois continued jabbing, while Joshua tried countering with rights. Joshua clinched, and Dubois used his head again, receiving another stern warning. Then, near the round's end, Dubois struck. Joshua was caught circling away with his hands down. AJ came out aggressively in the second, but soon, Dubois was on him again. Joshua went into survival mode. Surprisingly, Dubois proved too fast for Joshua and beat him to the punch. The third started as a battle of the jabs, but Dubois struck again. Joshua circled away, trying to land something big. And although AJ had some success, Dubois was too quick for him. And near the round's end, Dubois landed. In the corner, Joshua looked deflated, while Eddie Hearn looked shell-shocked.
Eddie Hearn looks like he's just seen a ghost.
Dubois dropped Joshua again to start the fourth. Much like his drug-dealing heroes, AJ showed bravado. Then, as Dubois pounced, Prince Andrew waved the fight off. Or at least he seemed to. The rules state that when a referee calls a slip, his palms are supposed to be facing the ground. Instead, Marcus McDonald waved his dirty hands above his head as if ending the bout. Thankfully, the action resumed. Dubois went for the finish, and now Joshua was on the edge of defeat. But in the midst of darkness, there shone a blonde ray of hope in the form of Ben Davison. In our 2022 version of this program, we highlighted how Davison routinely spent time on the actual ring canvas, practically becoming the fourth man in the ring. Once again, he found himself among the action, stealing water from Joshua's bottle and shouting instructions. Usually, the rules state that the chief seconds are supposed to remain seated, but nowhere does it state the trainer is allowed to actually sit on the ring canvas. As usual, no one said anything. Dubois barged forward, and at the round's end, Joshua pretended everything was fine by escorting Dubois to his seat. Turkey El-Ashik appeared displeased. In the fifth, Dubois slowed down after 4 furious rounds. He tried to rough Joshua up, and once again, AJ's bravado surfaced. He had reason to be cocky. But just as soon as success reared its head for Joshua, it receded into darkness. The referee was brave for counting, but it was all over. Dubois, the two-time quitter, had redeemed himself. The surprise of the night wasn't necessarily that Dubois had stopped Joshua, but that he'd outboxed him in the process. Entering the bout, Joshua, the Olympic gold medalist, was seen at worst as the third best heavyweight in the world. But against Dubois, he seemed unable to evade jabs and retreated with his hands down, misjudging his opponent's range. Meanwhile, his trainer, Ben Davison, provided these instructions during the bout.
Be ready to drop and smother, be ready to drop and smother, or be ready to counter.
That was it? Dip and smother? That was the best defense Joshua could muster? Why didn't Joshua have his hands up in the first place? Joshua, one of the faces of boxing, had accumulated many critics, and they surfaced after his loss.
What a shot! Anthony Joshua face down at Wembley!
And the memes rolled in. Still, Joshua had been in this situation before, and he released a video claiming he'd return. As for Dubois, he and his promoter, Frank Warren, had turned the tables on Hearn after years of being under his shadow. There was talk of a rematch, but few gave Joshua a chance. At 27 years old, Dubois was in a prime position to become the division's champion. Quite a scene compared to where he was a year earlier. In 2022, the undefeated light heavyweight titleist Beterbiev-Bivol I outboxed Saul Canelo Alvarez, the man many considered as being the best boxer in the world. However, being a non-English speaking Russian, Bivol failed to capitalize on the fame. Later that year, he traveled to Saudi Arabia to face the undefeated Mexican Gilberto Zurdo Ramirez. There, Bivol displayed all the attributes that made him a top pound-for-pound menace: speed, coordination, technique, and stamina. No fancy shoulder roll, no exaggerated upper body movement. Just the basics. During his 20-plus fight career, the Russian had barely lost any rounds. There was talk of a Canelo-Bivol rematch, but the fight failed to materialize. It was good that it didn't, because what fans really wanted was for Bivol to fight a legitimate light heavyweight. This came in the form of the fellow Russian, a man known as one of the most lethal boxers in the sport, Artur Beterbiev. With a record of 20 wins, all by stoppage, the 38-year-old undefeated Russian was a one-man demolition crew. Despite both men's stellar credentials, they both had the same problem. Few people knew who they were. Even in their native Russia, Both Beterbiev and Bivol were not high-level attractions. Still, both men demanded good money to unify the light heavyweight division. This would be difficult, seeing as how neither man could draw peanuts in the USA. Bob Arum, Beterbiev's promoter, explained that the lack of audience on the DAZN network interfered with the fight's financial demands. Arum even refused to pull the trigger in Beterbiev's adopted home of Quebec, a boxing-obsessed province. And so, Bivol spent most of 2023 out of the ring, dealing with an aggressive, soon-to-be ex-wife. He returned in December and fought Lyndon Arthur, dropping the Brit en route to another easy decision win. As for Beterbiev, 2022 saw him dismantle the power-punching Joe Smith Jr. before injuring himself, thus postponing a bout against the Brit, Anthony Yarde. In early 2023, Beterbiev encountered some resistance from Yarde before putting him away in the 8th round. The Russian was then scheduled to fight another Brit, former super middleweight champion Callum Smith. But again, Beterbiev injured himself. The bout took place in early 2024. Beterbiev made easy work of Smith. Now, more than ever, fans demanded a Bivol-Beterbiev bout. Luckily for them, such a fight could materialize thanks to a new player, the Saudi, Turki al-Sheikh. A purported boxing fanatic, the Sheikh was in charge of organizing the kingdom's entertainment in an effort to turn it into a tourist attraction, and boxing was the preferred staple. With money to burn, al-Sheikh offered the money necessary to cover both men's purses. And so, the dream match was made. But of course, 2024 wouldn't have been a real year without Beterbiev hurting himself, and the bout was delayed to October 2024. By the time the fall neared, fans brimmed with anticipation. One highly interested party was Bivol's ex-wife, Ekaterina. Citing physical as well as psychological abuse from her husband, Ekaterina embarked on a social media campaign designed to sabotage Bivol's victory, and it involved airing all of her husband's dirty laundry, including his nagging injuries. Speaking of laundry, Ekaterina also disposed of her own clothing via her Instagram page. Some wondered whether she was just another attention-starved woman, and that her public spats with Bivol might just have been a way to gain said attention. One person disinterested in the limelight was Artur Beterbiev, as was evidenced by his one-word answers.
You look good, you look ready.
Yes.
How? I don't think I'm going to get much more, or am I?
No one was asking him to be Conor McGregor, but it seemed as if Beterbiev was reveling in the awkward situations his short answers created. One man who failed to share the sentiment was Bivol's promoter, Eddie Hearn.
I think it was you or Addy asked him the question, and he just went, good. And it's like, hang on a minute, you're getting paid an absolute fortune. He couldn't care less. In a way, I respect it, but in a way, I think it's a little bit disrespectful.
Beterbiev, for his part, confronted Hearn.
You want to make fight with Eddie? No?
Yeah, he called you arrogant.
Why you do that?
He called you arrogant.
It really can be, but I can do something,
Don't worry about me. You have to get through him first.
But why
when he's finished with you, it'll be easier for me.
Maybe today,
Maybe. I don't think it would be a tough fight. You need a real
challenge. You're not good condition now.
I mean, terrible.
You talk a lot.
That's my job.
Yeah.
You should try it.
For a man brushing with death, Hearn was way too calm. In the end, the world would finally get an undisputed light heavyweight champion. Both men started boxing behind a high guard, but it was Bivol who connected first with his laser jabs. Beterbiev tried to steal the round, and the two men exchanged. The fight was uneventful, in that both men were too defensively sound to create an all-out war. Still, it was Bivol who was leading Beterbiev around, and throughout the early rounds, he appeared to be landing the cleaner shots. In between rounds, Beterbiev's corner implored him to continue pressuring. Bivol beat Beterbiev to the punch in the 7th. The combos allow him to land the cleaner shots. Awakened by the attack, Beterbiev finally turned it up and mauled his foe. Who had won that round? Bivol appeared to be one step ahead, but entering the championship rounds, Beterbiev upped the pace. He wasn't landing the cleanest shots, but he seemed to have tired Bivol out. Bivol held on, an uncharacteristic move from him. Both men refused to cede the momentum. In the end, Bivol looked tired but elated. Beterbiev, meanwhile, looked stern. It had been a tough ending for Bivol, but it seemed like he'd banked too many of the early rounds to lose. Then, the decision came. Beterbiev won the championship by majority decision. After the bout, he claimed it hadn't been his best performance. Bivol, meanwhile, refused to complain. He was, however, clearing his intent for a rematch. After the bout, many polls showed a divided public. Indeed, the always controversial punch stats displayed a close fight in terms of connected punches. Beterbiev appeared happy, but perhaps nowhere near as jubilant as Bivol's ex-wife.
Артур, да! Ну что, карма настигла своего. Артур, я рада за тебя. Вперед. Теперь мое дело в суде.
In the end, a rematch was set for late February. If ever there was a bout deserving of a rematch, it was this one. And the result should be known by the time of this video's release. Last year, welterweight Terence Crawford had finally emerged. After years of chasing his arch-rival, Errol Spence, a bout finally materialized in the summer of 2023. There, the two undefeated boxers met in what was expected to be a clash of titans. Instead, Crawford devoured Spence, dropping him numerous times en route to a 9th-round stoppage. The beating was so pronounced that people immediately concocted a myriad of reasons explaining Spence's loss. And though the theories bordered on being Glovegate 2.0, it was likely that Spence's inactivity, along with his party lifestyle, had probably diminished him as a boxer. Still, that wasn't any of Crawford's fault, and fans posited that Spence and his team should have made the fight earlier, instead of over-marinating the bout. Now, Crawford's name carried more weight, and many fans and pundits placed him atop the pound-for-pound list. Prior to the Spence bout, Crawford had been portrayed as a besmirched boxer, a highly talented pugilist screwed over by the boxing establishment. But just as soon as Crawford had gained folk hero status, the boxer began to unravel his facade. The first blow came later in 2023, when Naoya Inoue, the main opponent for the pound-for-pound crown, managed to unify his own division in less than a year. Crawford, unwilling to let the fans argue the case for him, aired his grievances online. First, he claimed he was the first fighter to chase undisputed status, meaning owning all 4 belts. But this was a muddy issue, as owning 4 paper belts wasn't as important as the opposition defeated, and therefore, not always a fantastic feat. Second of all, plenty of fighters before the 4-belt era, meaning before the WBO's sudden recognition as a legitimate belt, had acquired undisputed status. The point is that even if one wanted to treat these paper belts as important, Crawford certainly wasn't the first man to achieve the feat. Crawford would then label anyone who disagreed with him as being a hater. Then he began to brandish himself as the Fighter of the Year, a title which ultimately went to Naoya Inoue. Usually, fighters are humble and leave fans to be the ones doling out the praise. But Crawford wanted to do it another way. As we entered 2024, Crawford would often find himself tweeting about his self-professed greatness. This turning character was unsurprising to anyone who'd been paying attention. Back in 2021, after top-ranked promotions had paid him generous money to fight unknowns and no-hopers, Crawford thanked the company by badmouthing its founder, Bob Arum.
Bob couldn't secure me the Spence fight when I was with him, so how you gonna secure me the Spence fight when I'm not with him?
As if criticizing Top Rank wasn't enough, he also sued them for failure to deliver big fights. He also sued them for being racist. Ultimately, the lawsuit would fizzle out, and Crawford, now in his mid-30s, neared his career's end. Perhaps because of this, he began to chase a fight with boxing's golden goose, Saul Canelo Alvarez, a man fighting 3 divisions above him. Emboldened by Crawford's win over Spence, fans and fellow boxers gave him a chance, with some even picking him to beat the Mexican.
I would pick Terence Crawford to beat a Canelo Alvarez, even at 168. Everybody can call me crazy and whatever you want to say.
At first, Crawford remained ambivalent about his chances.
That's the mega fight, that's the money fight, that's the only thing that makes sense for Terence Crawford.
Well, you know what I mean? Catch weight. We can do something at a catch weight.
What weight you think?
Probably like 160 or something.
But you said 154 is the highest you want to go.
Yeah, 158, 160, that'd be cool.
But as 2024 progressed, Crawford grew confident. Still, as memory of the Spence win faded, Crawford came in need of a performance to remind people that he could indeed beat Canelo. And so, with the help of Saudi money, Crawford would headline a megacard in August. His opponent would be a 154-pound titleist, Usyk-Madrimov. Despite having less than 20 pro bouts, the undefeated Madrimov had beaten some respectable opponents. Moreover, he was a skilled operator who could crack with both hands. Still, many fans and experts remained under Crawford's spell, and few gave Madrimov a chance to make it the distance, let alone win. Eddie Hearn, Madrimov's promoter, talked his usual game, much to Crawford's displeasure.
You're very nervous today. I don't know what's wrong with you. Your energy's all off.
We gonna all pummel you.
I don't give a fuck.
Despite a career spent in lower weight divisions, Crawford weighed in heavier than Madrimov on fight night. Then, before the fight, something bizarre occurred. As Crawford was warming up, hitting the mitts, one of his gloves burst open. This might have seemed innocuous, were it not for the fact that it proved the second time his gloves had torn. The first instance occurred in 2022 against David Evanesian. There, both of Crawford's gloves had exploded, something which Crawford tried to hide. Ultimately, the confused Omaha Commission allowed the fight to continue, claiming they would replace the gloves the following round. Why they would allow the bout to resume with defective gloves was never explained. Instead, Crawford proceeded to stop Evanesian that very round. Strangely, Crawford ended up showing up to the post-fight press conference with his hand wraps on. Had the man showered with his hands covered in tape and gauze. Either way, the Madrimov fight went on. As usual, Crawford started off as a southpaw. Madrimov, meanwhile, applied pressure and feinted. In the second, Crawford jabbed and looked for an opening. Madrimov continued probing. Near the end, Crawford flurried to the body, but Madrimov returned upstairs. Things intensified slightly in the third, with both men landing. The fourth continued being a chess match, and it was clear that Madrimov was no Errol Spence. Madrimov stood in front of Crawford, and the American's sharpshooting skills were diminished in front of the Uzbek's defense. Now, Madrimov loosened up and fired from all angles. Crawford opened the sixth by going to the body, hoping to slow his younger foe down. Both men missed a lot in the seventh round. In the eighth, Both men stepped it up, knowing the fight was close. Now, it would be up to Crawford, the pound-for-pound king, boxing's ultimate brain, to make ingenious adjustments. Instead, he stuck his tongue out. The battle intensified. Madrimov was on point in the ninth, his right hand searing. By the end, the American's right eye was closing. Sensing urgency, Crawford upped the pace in the 10th and bruised Madrimov's face. But the Uzbek stood his ground, landing shots. Crawford replied with his pound-for-pound skills by shaking his head and sticking his tongue out. Madrimov, having only gone 12 rounds once, was in dangerous territory as he entered the championship rounds, and he began to clinch. Still, Crawford had no answer for the straight right hands. In the final round, Crawford pressed behind his jab. The American tried closing the show, but Madrimov wasn't going anywhere. In the end, Crawford walked away with a unanimous decision, with Judge Fernando Villarreal scoring at a shocking 116-112. Some clowned Crawford for having struggled with a 10-0 fighter, but those who'd seen Madrimov fight knew his real worth. Still, Crawford had been less than stellar, both in his performance and with his post-fight statements.
How unusual was the movements, the constant feinting Madrimov did?
It wasn't like disrupting me or anything. It was his patience. I just was trying to counter him, but at the same time, he had a good game plan. He had a lot of feints, and I was just trying to dictate when he was going to come, and a lot of times I was wrong.
Perhaps he'd suffered memory loss from shaking his head every time Madrimov hit him. Despite Crawford's neurological issues, some of his comrades remained enamored with him. Lightweight contender Shakur Stevenson praised the fight's action, but claimed Crawford won it easily, saying, "You gotta have high boxing IQ to understand that." The same boxing IQ necessary to see that Stevenson doesn't leap like a rabbit during his fights, as he operates at the 12th dimensional level of the sweet science. Former world champion Timothy Bradley, meanwhile, still held on to the dream that Crawford could beat Canelo, stating, "Crawford ain't no Charlo." Meanwhile, Crawford secured another fight, not for the boxing ring, mind you, but on Instagram, against Eddie Hearn. The American posted a picture of a solemn-looking Hearn and added the caption, "What's wrong, Eddie Hearn?" The Brit replied by saying, "Was simply mesmerized with how easy Madrimov hit you with the right hand all night in just his 11th pro fight. And this did it." Crawford exploded with a long rant, saying, 5-0 against Matchroom, Eddie ain't shit at darts. You better be thanking Turki Al-Sheikh for keeping you and these other clowns in business. Turki Al-Sheikh only cares about what's best for the fighters and fan, not the people who have been destroying the sport. Let the haters hate. Either the fighter loses or leaves you. I appreciate greatness, Edward. This was a bizarre turn of events. Crawford was the one who started mocking Hearn, but is the one that ended up butthurt. Moreover, he derided boxing promoters by insinuating they needed foreign money. This would prove ironic, as pay-per-view sales for the Madrimov bout ended up crashing. Just as he'd done with Top Rank, Crawford was still costing people money. Rumors would later circulate that the tickets had failed to sell out for the Madrimov bout. In the end, Crawford once again ended up praising himself by calling himself great. It was easy to see why Crawford constantly got into street fights as a youth. The man's skin was as thin as the leather on his exploding gloves. Later, Turki Al-Sheikh expressed his belief that Crawford didn't want to fight anyone but Canelo. Soon, the Duran Ennis fans resumed their hostilities from the previous year and claimed Crawford was scared. Later, it was revealed that a Crawford vs. McGregor 2-fight deal, with one being a boxing bout, the other MMA, had been discussed. Ultimately, Crawford rejected it. Fans clowned him on social media for looking to cash out. Crawford replied by saying that if he was desperate for a payday, he would have taken the McGregor deal. But in a previous interview, Crawford himself had already revealed why he'd rejected the deal.
Listen, man, I'm not getting in no fucking octagon with you so you can be kicking me and elbowing me and shit.
Remember that this is a man with thin skin, and perhaps getting manhandled in MMA would have been too much for his ego. After all the posturing, Crawford would then change his mind and called out McGregor, thus continuing his odd behavior.
I just want to be a part of your life. I'm not going to be ignored.
Another man with ego issues was the undisputed junior welterweight champion, Teofimo Lopez. The volatile Lopez called out Crawford to a fight, claiming he'd beat him for free. As expected, this set Crawford off, and the pair went at it on Twitter like teenage schoolgirls. The out-of-control Crawford even issued veiled threats. Crawford's ire stemmed from a video in which Lopez had been asked about fighting him or Tank Davis.
Whichever monkey wants to get the banana.
Okay, all right. So whoever you don't.
Some people construed the statement as being racist, and Crawford chimed in.
T.O. is like the little kid that's screaming for attention. Had that been me or Tank,
yes,
that call him
yes,
a racial slur,
yes,
you know, they would have been trying to cancel us. They would have been, you know, all the bloggers would have been, you know, disrespecting us, calling us racists, and it'd have been all over all the news outlets.
Crawford claims some people would have called him racist, but the American had made racist comments before. Back in 2018, prior to his bout with Jose Benavides Jr., Crawford said this to the Mexican American.
I'm gonna get all them burritos out you, boy. I'm gonna get all them burritos out you. I'm gonna get all them burritos out you.
Few batted an eyelash at the comment, certainly less people than the ones in a furor over Lopez's comments, thus disproving Crawford's victim narrative that people would have gone at him hard had he been in Lopez's shoes. Despite keeping his name in the headlines, Crawford remained a celebrity only in the boxing world, as evidenced by his UFC appearance. For the 5th year in a row, Crawford only fought once. If only he were as judicious when it came to talking. In past Most Shocking segments, including our Most Shocking Moments of All Time series, the recurring theme is that of fans prematurely labeling boxers as invincible boogeymen. Entering 2024, Liam Paro was an undefeated junior welterweight looking for a title shot. By 2021, the Australian had beaten some decent opposition, but no world-class boxers. In 2022, he took on the undefeated Brock Jarvis and displayed his strengths. He was a long southpaw with speed and power. In 2023, he took on former undefeated hopeful Montana Love and dropped his foe multiple times en route to a stoppage. But his record remained thin, and in a division filled with dangerous foes, many doubted whether Paro could compete. Paro would get his opportunity in 2024, but it would come against a literal killer. Hailing from Puerto Rico, the 32-year-old Paro-Matias was forging a fearsome reputation. Despite being a slow starter, Matias eventually increased the pressure to overwhelm his opponents. 5 out of his last 8 opponents were undefeated, and all of Matias's wins came by stoppage. The only time he'd gone the distance was in his sole loss, which came against Petros Ananian. There, a listless Matias was 1 fight removed from tragically killing Maxim Dadashev. But in the rematch, Matias avenged his loss by stopping Ananian. It appeared as if no one could withstand the heat once Matias warmed up, and an inexperienced Paro seemed destined for a fast start before eventually fading into defeat. Meanwhile, fans were already demanding fights between Matias and men such as Devin Haney, Teofimo Lopez and Tank Davis. Were they counting their eggs before they hatched? Despite fighting in his home country, Matias surrendered the first round, as usual. In the second, the titleist stepped it up, but Paro remained active, firing shots from all angles. Some of the blows broke Matias' guard. Simultaneously, referee Luis Pabon glared at the Australian and soon began warning him about perceived infractions. The intimidation continued in between rounds.
Listen to me. I told you in the dressing room, respect me, but you don't respect me. Hey.
After Pabon got in Paro's face, the Australian's trainer asked for clarification.
What's that for, sorry? Hey, boss. It's coming the other way too, but I told you.
Matias continued pressing in the third, but Paro always replied with something. Midway through, the Puerto Rican intensified his attack, and Paro began clinching. In Matias' corner, the trainers asked for more action. As the bout unfolded, Paro was forced to keep his hands moving against Matias' constant pressure, and referee Luis Pabon continued warning the Australian. Now, it appeared as if Paro was feeling the heat from both sides, and his clinching intensified. Again, it seemed as if Matias was about to overtake another opponent. But just as soon as Paro appeared to fade, he rebounded in the fifth round. It became clear that, as long as Paro kept his hands moving and varied his attack speed, Matias just wouldn't punch enough. However, the six saw more clinching from Paro, and the crowd's excitement grew near the end of the round. The hostilities resumed in the seventh, and Pabon finally deducted Paro a point, much to the commentator's chagrin.
1 point.
What are we doing? Can we stop?
1 point.
The blow may have looked harmless, but it was still an illegal blow. Surprisingly, neither Pabon nor the commentators saw any issue with Paro's constant hugging. Things heated up that round, but Paro stood his ground. As the rounds unfolded, so did the pattern of Matias punching only when Paro stopped throwing. Paro almost lost another point in the eighth for punching after the break. Matias flurried to end the eighth. Matias started the ninth with more urgency, and Paro risked another rabbit shot. The Puerto Rican pressed, but Paro dug deep, helped in part by the clinching. But tough guy Luis Pabon continued ignoring it. Entering the championship rounds, Paro's stamina would be tested.
Liam Paro has never been past the 10th round.
Paro kept punching and turning. Matias let his hands go, but his vaunted power was nowhere to be seen. By the end of the 10th, he appeared tired. Entering the 11th, Matias barged forward, but he seemed lethargic. Paro, meanwhile, punched, clinched, and rabbit punched, effectively curtailing Matias' usual activity. Matias ran to Paro in the final round, but the Australian fought with passion. When he wasn't punching, he was implementing the dark cards. In the end, Paro defeated Matias by unanimous decision. He deflated Matias' boogeyman bubble. Elated, the Australian said, "I'm on top of the world right now. I'm honestly speechless. I've been a road warrior. Let's bring the fights back to Queensland." Matias, for his part, bizarrely stated that he didn't really have a game plan other than to stop Paro. Indeed, that's how the fight looked. He was also candid in saying he felt humiliated losing at home. Still, Matias refused to make excuses.
No, I don't believe I overlooked him at all. I think he just did his work very well.
Despite Matias' unwillingness to make excuses, the reality was that Paro had indeed scored with a number of rabbit punches, as well as constant clinching. One can only wonder how the fight would have gone without them. Still, one would have expected boxing's boogeyman to surpass all of that. But Matias' performance and post-fight statements were indicative of someone who thought all he needed to win was to show up. Meanwhile, Paro came in with a game plan and a full gas tank. Unfortunately for Paro, he would lose his title in his first defense in a lackluster bout against Richardson Hitchens. There, Paro proved unable to close the distance or mount a sustained attack, and both men threw one punch at a time. Quite a contrast to his bout with Matias. Still, 2024 proved once again not to invest too much into a so-called boogeyman. For more than a century, the Marquis of Queensberry rules have governed the boxing world, creating one of the most aesthetically pleasing sports ever. These rules elevated the sport from the grimy depths of underground bare knuckle into a multi-million-dollar industry, emphasizing athleticism and skill over the primitive notion of win by any means necessary. But in 2024, a bout took place that made many a fan ask, what is cheating? Since turning pro in 2015, the undefeated junior welterweight Devin Haney was finally enjoying some fame. In 2022, he graduated from prospect to champion when he traveled to Australia and easily decisioned the lineal lightweight champion, George Kambosos. In 2023, he took on the former champion, Vasyl Lomachenko. It was a competitive bout, but most agreed the Ukrainian had landed the cleaner shots throughout the bout. Somehow, the judges awarded the fight to Haney. The logical route would have been a rematch, but Haney, guided by his father and trainer Bill, claimed a clear victory and moved up to the 140-pound division. There, Haney outboxed the hard-hitting titleist, Regis Prograis, virtually winning every round. Now, the Haney fans lauded their fighter as the next pound-for-pound king, as well as the next Floyd Mayweather Jr. But upon examination, Haney's career appeared overly reliant on crafting false narratives and playing games. In 2021, the Haneys began a campaign accusing the lightweight champion, Vasyl Lomachenko, of ducking them. In 2022, after the Australian George Kambosos had taken the championship from Teofimo Lopez, the Haneys dragged out negotiations with Kambosos. Lomachenko stepped in and quickly agreed to all the demands, making the Haneys look afraid. It was only thanks to special circumstances that Haney finally stepped up to the plate. A year later, Haney pulled a similar stunt, delaying negotiations with Vasyl Lomachenko.
So why hasn't that deal been closed yet?
Lomachenko did close his side of the deal, and Haney wasn't able to close his side, but I do think this one's actually going to be resolved in the coming days, if not next week.
In 2023, Haney rightfully received credit for outboxing Prograis, but Prograis was an older fighter, and the Haneys only decided to fight him once they were convinced they could beat him. This further added to the reputation of being overly cautious matchmakers. Despite the Haneys' Machiavellianism, Devin failed to generate the expected fame. The Prograis fight had done well at the gate in Haney's home state of California, but the pay-per-view numbers were rumored to have been desultory. In an interview, Haney tried to play coy about the numbers, but it didn't take a Quantico-trained agent to read his body language.
Honestly, I haven't even got the pay-per-view numbers yet.
Do you have any kind of sense, or not yet?
Not yet. No, I don't have it. I don't have the numbers yet, but shortly.
Still, his fans, along with many in the boxing media, were quick to anoint him as the next great American superstar. Meanwhile, a faded one entered the fray. Ryan Garcia was in a unique position. He'd become famous before having accomplished anything of note as a boxer, instead gaining a massive following via social media. His fans comprised mostly teenage girls, along with what we can only refer to as particularly festive men. In 2018, Garcia stepped up in class against French contender Carlos Morales and looked horrible in a clinch-filled affair that saw him stunned by a jab. By then, rumors circulated of a strained relationship between Garcia and his promoter, Oscar de la Hoya. Allegedly, Garcia refused certain bouts and demanded outrageous clauses. Afterwards, however, Garcia began to move correctly. He hired Eddie Reynoso, trainer of Saul Canelo Alvarez, and notched impressive knockouts with his vaunted left hook. In 2021, he fought former titleist Luke Campbell. Now adopting a more aggressive style, Garcia tasted the canvas, but rallied back and became the first man to halt the Brit. Despite the improvements, Garcia once again displayed his unbalanced nature. After the best showing of his career, Garcia retired, claiming mental health issues. The boxing world rallied to support him, but within weeks, he was back on Twitter, this time mocking his future opponents. This left a bad taste in fans' mouths. Predictably, Garcia returned in 2022, but missing in his corner was Eddie Reynoso. Garcia replaced Reynoso with the underrated Joe Goossen and continued fighting in a more aggressive posture. The performances convinced him that he was ready for another undefeated lightweight, and he took on the undefeated Gervonta Tank Davis. Talks of a bout had taken place beforehand, but as it often happens between American boxers, the negotiations went nowhere. The two men decided to fight in the spring of 2023, but only after Garcia accepted Davis's terms. Allegedly, Garcia would be prohibited from taking a tune-up, while Davis took a stay-busy fight, and the bout would take place at a catchweight, along with a rehydration clause. Davis himself admitted he needed those conditions because Garcia was too strong, saying, "I'm just making sure everything's fair. And I know that Ryan Garcia is a bigger fighter. He already has the advantage, the size, the arm length, like everything. He has the most advantage. So I'm just making it a little fair." Against his promoter's pleas, Garcia accepted the terms. Despite suffering a knockdown early in the bout, Garcia fought well, pressing the power puncher and forcing him to clinch. But a body shot in the 7th left him paralyzed, and Garcia had enough. Some accused him of quitting, and Garcia would later blame the weight stipulations for his defeat. But there would be more targets for his corn. He returned in the fall of 2023 to face the heavy-handed Oscar Duarte. Once again, the drama returned. Garcia not only blamed the Davis loss on the weight concessions, but he also blamed his promoters, Oscar de la Hoya and Bernard Hopkins, for allowing him to accept the terms, even though they had specifically told him to refuse them. Moreover, Garcia accused them of abandoning him after the loss, leaving him alone in the press conference. Hopkins and de la Hoya, however, claimed that they'd been threatened with physical violence via anonymous phone calls and were told to stay away from the conference. This was easy to believe, seeing as how Davis, no stranger to outside-the-ring violence and legal troubles, had often bragged about having hitmen at the ready.
If it was the streets, these niggas would have been smoked, and that's what it is. If it was personal, they would have been packing them up. Been an address, niggas at their house.
But Garcia remained truculent, and even clashed with Bernard Hopkins during the Duarte buildup. But the promoter was not the only culprit. Garcia also blamed Joe Goossen for running an unsecured training camp. Moreover, Garcia would claim he hadn't lived properly during the Davis training camp. Did this mean that Garcia failed to take the biggest fight of his life seriously, while simultaneously conning the fans into purchasing a pay-per-view? As usual, Garcia wasn't thinking before speaking. In his mind, he was blameless. Predictably, he sacked Joe Goossen and hired Derrick James. Fittingly, the Garcia-Duarte bout was a bizarre clash, as Duarte pressed, while Garcia clinched, turned away, and bent over in a move which boxing fans dubbed the Bussy Roll. Garcia bailed himself out with a left hook and stopped Duarte. But the outside-the-ring problems, combined with his pseudo-sexual performance, suggested the end was near. To the Haney's prowling eyes, Garcia was the perfect opponent, a petulant but limited boxer who still possessed a big enough name to generate box office success. The only fighter who could rival Garcia's box office power was Gervonta Davis, but the Baltimore native was incarcerated. Thus, the Haneys picked Ryan Garcia for an April 2024 bout. The festivities started out with a bang as Garcia, now traveling with a bodyguard, confronted the Haneys.
You're not my friend, remember that. You're not my friend. Your dad's a fuck out you. You gonna feel some feel you ain't felt? We gonna talk about. Don't do that. No. Hey, what's up? What's up? Yeah, got him. Got him. Back up. You should
Garcia then appeared on the Valuetainment podcast. Wearing a coat jacket indoors, Garcia spoke with a hoarse voice.
My son born 12/23/23. My mom born 4/4/64. You understand? Like, numbers have like spiritual meaning.
All while compulsively snacking.
So funny, they have a rivalry that goes decades.
And sticking his fingers into his mouth. He also displayed San Francisco mannerisms.
That's right, girl. All right, sister.
In another unusual interview, Garcia revealed an affinity for facial beauty tools. The big talking point before the bout involved Garcia and Haney having fought each other about a half a dozen times, with the pair splitting the bouts. Both fighters claimed to have given each other 8 counts during these fights. The theatrics intensified during the press conferences, with Garcia making lavish entrances. For many, Ryan Garcia had lost respect as a boxer following the Davis performance, and many felt that, once again, the Haneys had cherry-picked another opponent. Bill Haney rebuked the notion.
We really take Ryan Garcia serious. I think that it's a distraction. He's attempting to appear as a TikToker. I know him as a 12-time national amateur champion.
Aware of Garcia's lifestyle, Haney questioned why Garcia's voice changed.
And just to be really direct.
What the fuck happened to your voice?
So at the end of the day, I've been screaming for these promos, but I'm not even gonna react.
Then, approximately 1 month before the bout, things took a turn for the bizarre.
No, hold on. I don't know what that is, bro. Start dipping, bro. Dip.
Garcia, via his social media empire, released a cryptic video. Then, the account posted a nearly incomprehensible message, claiming Garcia had been terminated. The post included the number of the beast. The post also claimed that Garcia had been thrown into a basket, with the word through misspelled as through. Garcia resurfaced, rambling about having been kidnapped and abused by social elites, as well as having been privy to extraterrestrial contact via his high-profile connections. He elucidated all of this on a live Twitter space with media personality Andrew Tate.
All right, talk to us.
Bro, I don't give a bro. They held me down and they made me watch little kids get I don't give a anymore. They tied me down and they made me watch, dog. I don't give a bro. They raped me, right? I was 2 years old, they raped me. I have proof of that too.
Later, Garcia appeared with a video message to his fans.
Hey guys, it's me, Ryan. I'm coming on here to explain what's going on. I'm not in possession of my phone. I can't get access to my Instagram. I'm okay. I'm not dead. I believe in Jesus. They try to put me in jail. They're blocking my cards. I can't access my money. I don't know what's going on.
Garcia's father would later emerge, stating that his son was merely trolling. If Garcia was indeed acting out so as to sell the fight, then it was up to people's personal preference to decide whether his antics were in bad taste or not. However, as journalist Steve Kim remarked, Garcia had been acting as a proponent of mental health back in 2021. If Garcia was merely acting now, wasn't he belittling the plight of the mentally ill? Devin Haney was quick to point to Garcia's wild antics.
What kind of example are you for the younger generation watching this?
The world's gonna see me beat down Ryan Garcia, get him out of boxing, because he's definitely not a good role model and not a guy that, you know, the younger generation should be looking at.
NGQ, doing what I do. All white, looking nice. Okay, come through.
I don't know if Ryan Garcia is taking the fight serious or not.
Garcia's hijinks riled people up so much, to the point in which the New York State Athletic Commission ordered him to undergo psychological testing. Predictably, the commission ruled he was competent to compete. It didn't take long before Garcia and the Haneys bickered.
So I'm coming straight for his neck. I promise you that. I promise you, I'm coming straight for you. You're gonna need a help him, I swear. You're gonna have 3 opportunities to save him.
You know, Ryan
does not want the fight to be here. Behind closed doors, he's tricking the people. He's doing anything that he can to make the fight go to Vegas on a later date.
I feel like if I wanted to, I could outbox you. Like if I just move on my bike and beat you, I could beat you like that. I just don't want to do it.
Please.
It's not fun to me. I can't fight the way you fight, bro. I'm sorry. I'll be bored.
Devin Haney, renowned for having his entourage talking for him, once again set his dogs on his opponent, and it brought the best out of Garcia.
What are you talking about, dude? You always talking, bro. You're the most annoying one in the group.
Thank you, the Lord Jesus Christ, the King of Kings, Lord of Lords. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus.
Hey, what if I came up there and I beat the out of you, motherfucker? I bet you won't do it.
No, I'm on fire. I'm on fire. I'm on fire. I'll break this whole thing right now. That's how I'm fire. I'm strong. 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 And I'm louder than that whole team. They got like 5 people there. Look how loud. Woo! We couldn't hear you, bitch.
Even Bill Haney and Bernard Hopkins got into it. This after Hopkins suggested they go to the bathroom.
So, let's go to the bathroom. Huh? Talk to the bathroom for a minute. Don't do what I'm going to do and I'm going to go about it. That's nothing. That's nothing.
Bill would later accuse Hopkins of not helping out the community.
He says he's from, and he was in the penitentiary, and somehow give off the image that he's doing something for the people. Well, he hasn't. Definitely everything that he's done hasn't represented me or what my people stand for. So I'm gonna get past that part.
As the bout approached, the Haneys continued downplaying Garcia's worth.
He know he don't have the skills, he don't have the IQ. Listen, he don't have the heart. We seen him quit. And I don't think that Ryan has got much better since the amateurs. I think he's a one-trick pony. I'm just a better overall fighter. It's nothing that Ryan can do that's better than me. Ryan Garcia goes in there and he just jumps on you with no real game plan, no nothing.
Haney was so confident, he dared Garcia to meet him in the center of the ring.
Devin, your father likes to make bold predictions. He told me earlier this week that you're gonna knock Ryan out in the first round.
He get in there, he get reckless, he will get caught, like we've seen him get caught before.
You're gonna meet him right there, in the middle of the ring, and you want to slug it out with him.
I don't think Ryan will meet me in the middle.
I just don't think you're gonna go in the middle of the ring. I mean, that would be stupid.
Why?
All right, come to center.
Garcia and everyone else were correct in being skeptical. After all, Haney had failed to stop or even hurt the notoriously chinny Yuriorkis Gamboa and Jorge Linares. Meanwhile, Garcia, for all his faults, was a legitimate power puncher. Were the Haneys indeed overlooking Garcia? Many other people seem to do so, as based on some of these comments. For them, Garcia was completely devoid of skills. Former champion Timothy Bradley said Garcia had no chance in winning and made an outlandish promise.
If Garcia somehow pulls off the upset, oh my gosh, I might as well just quit commentary and leave the game alone, man. I'm not gonna lie, because I just don't see it happen.
Bill Haney, meanwhile, was busy obsessing over a recently released sparring video between his son and Gervonta Davis.
I said when Floyd met you and he showed you the quote-unquote sparring session and told you they all in it. They all in it and they're going against Devin. And what you're going to see is the face of boxing, and you're going to see the new way of watching boxing. You're going to see Devin the Dream Haney victorious and still. And he's against all of them. Floyd, Brian.
The week of the bout, an altercation occurred. Garcia reacted like Linda Blair. Meanwhile, Bill Haney repeatedly said his light-punching son would do major damage.
It's going to be the death of Ryan Garcia in the way you guys know him. Saturday night, put your kids to bed. It's 18 and over, because what I'm sending Devin to do to him shouldn't be on TV. Saturday, this boy gonna pay for all that that he done did.
Told you we ready. Told you we ready. Told you we ready.
Garcia, for his part, remained consistently unpredictable.
When they get mad, it gets me excited. I just want to scream.
On your weight right now, are you gonna make weight? And is there any consequences to missing the weight now?
No consequences. I'll miss that if I want.
You win the fight.
It's my event.
You win the fight.
I'm kidding.
Garcia also confessed to being a regular Henry Kissinger.
You just tweeted that Donald Trump was coming to the fight.
Yeah, he is.
Did you talk to him?
Of course. I know all those guys. I know Bibi Netanyahu. I know all of them.
But the insanity was just getting started. At the weigh-in held in the morning, Ryan Garcia came in 3 pounds overweight. The Haneys, perhaps still underrating Garcia, accepted to fight, but only after receiving a substantial financial settlement. At the ceremonial weigh-in later that day, Garcia showed up, beer bottle in hand. Once again, theatrics ensued.
The two will finally square off for the final time. Tomorrow night, it goes down here at Barclays Center.
Alhamdulillah, this is all a dream come true. I dreamed of these moments, and the moment is finally here. Now it's time for me to shine. I'll end this. Get him out of box, and it's over.
Ryan Garcia, Ryan, intense stuff up there. What were you guys saying to each other?
I just said, meet me in the center of the ring like you. I gave you your money. You better give me my fucking money.
Why did you miss weight? What happened this morning?
I did my best, to make this weight. I put myself through hell. Yeah. Suck my dick.
And Bill Haney reiterated that Garcia would pay.
Like I said before, I'm doubling down on it. If he dies, he dies.
On fight night, Garcia spent his time locked backstage with a string quartet.
Playing the final song before the crash and burn.
It's either the Titanic or the Hannibal Lecter.
What prevails? Discipline or disorder? We got 12 rounds to find out. Here we go.
At round 1 start, Garcia pressed as expected. This was followed by the unexpected.
You're that aggressive. Get overconfident.
Oh, big left hand by Garcia. Locks Haney early.
Garcia might be a one-trick pony, but the pony could kick. Garcia smacked Haney around for a good minute before Haney fired back. And by the round's end, Haney seemed to have recovered. Garcia began the second by jumping on his foe, but with his wits back, Haney began connecting his jab. And from that jab flowed other punches. The third saw Garcia pressing, but Haney had timed the left hook and continued boxing. In the round's last minute, Haney got his payback.
Man in the ring. Left hand from Haney. And that causes Garcia to pound his gloves.
Garcia attempted a reply, but Haney smothered the attack. In the fourth, Garcia kept looking for that left hook, while Haney pecked away. By the midway point, Garcia landed a right hand. Then he retreated. The fifth saw more retreating from Garcia, as he was clearly trying to lure Haney into another counter. Haney appeared to get the better of the action. Garcia landed a right hand in the last minute, but Haney replied. Sensing the momentum slipping, Garcia launched combos in the sixth and appeared to stun Haney. After a few flurries, Garcia tired and began clinching. Sensing his opponent's fatigue, Haney pressed and Garcia pulled out the bussy roll. Instead of warning Garcia for illegally turning his back, the referee, Harvey Duck, warned Haney for kidney shots. Haney continued pressing, and now Garcia's success from the first round seemed a distant memory. Was this the best Garcia could muster? The seventh began with more mauling, as Haney uncharacteristically advanced against his tiring foe. Would Garcia find his second wind? He was seriously hurt. Haney held on for dear life, and Garcia's impulsiveness cost him a point. Garcia resumed the beating, and Haney flopped to the canvas multiple times. Thanks to the male hugging he'd perfected in the Linares fight, and perhaps elsewhere, Haney survived. Revitalized, Garcia began the eighth by slapping Haney around. But once again, Garcia slowed down by the second minute. Haney fired back, forcing Garcia into the pussy roll. Now, it was Garcia who clinched. Haney started the ninth angry, pushing Garcia back and sustaining more clinches. Once again, it appeared as if Garcia had squandered his earlier momentum. Garcia retook it in the 10th, opening up with combos. Garcia switched up punching angles and had Haney on the retreat. Another bump buckled Haney, and he desperately clinched. The 11th started relatively quiet, with Garcia once again looking for that hook. In the 2nd minute, he found it. Garcia begged Bill to stop the fight, but when that failed, he returned to smacking Haney. Desperate, Haney launched a right hand that missed. Before the last round, Derrick James, now conscious they were in a winnable fight, tried to keep his charge focused. Haney started the final round by running into an uppercut. Garcia swung, and both men clinched. By mid-round, Haney pressed, landing some shots. The two men traded as best they could. Then, Garcia out-Haney'd Haney. When the final bell rang, Garcia was elated. Although he'd scored 3 knockdowns, Garcia had also spent many rounds failing to land significant shots. On top of this, he was facing a man who seemed to hold some sway with the judges. After months of insanity, Garcia pulled it off by majority decision.
Come on, God, you really thought I was crazy?
Unsurprisingly, Timothy Bradley broke his promise by remaining in the sport. With that, Garcia celebrated his win and even met with President Donald Trump. In another Valuetainment podcast, Garcia revealed his pre-fight antics had been an act. Still, he maintained he was somewhat serious about the human trafficking allegations. As for Haney, he was forced to absorb the usual flood of internet memes. Meanwhile, Haney received emotional support from his family with a scrumptious-looking cake. But his father, Bill, appeared to unravel as he released a bizarre video.
But the one thing is that my son is the best son in the world to me. And I love him to death. I'll continue to go in back for him.
Why did Bill need to affirm that he still loved his son? Was he trying to convince himself after a C-list Instagram model embarrassed his progeny? Bill would later go toe-to-toe with one of Garcia's new high-profile acquaintances, Floyd Mayweather Jr., accusing the man of conspiring against his son.
Listen, I've been knowing you for hella long, but I feel like you're a shit-ass nigga. And you've been hating on me for a long time with that shit you've been blocking. And when my son got down on you, you dig what I'm saying? You act like, you tell us,
Bill,
no, you tell
I'm the under the lights
I got a nigga that don't lie. Yes.
What's my record under the lights? What's my record under the lights?
What's my record?
What is
What's my record in lights? Nigga, what's your record under the lights?
The argument somehow ended up being about urine.
Bill, I ain't gotta get, we ain't gotta have a pistol contest. Bill, I ain't gotta be drunk. I ain't gotta talk to you crazy. You know why?
I just pissed a little bit longer than you. What you talking about? We started pissing. You started pissing. I started pissing. What are you talking about?
Bill.
And with that, everyone lived happily ever after. That is until Ryan Garcia tested positive for a banned substance, Ostarine. Garcia shifted the blame around, but it was clear the substance had been in his system. The commission reversed the win, citing that Garcia had failed to inform them of the supplements he'd taken. With that, the fight was now a no contest. It had never happened. Immediately after Garcia's positive test, Haney managed to quickly set up an interview.
I'm a special kind of fighter. I never fought, and a guy has been that much better than me. I never been overmatched like that, and I've been in there with the best fighters in the world.
Perhaps he'd never felt that way, because he'd finally fought someone his same size. After all, as the documentary later emphasized, Haney had repeatedly boasted about his size advantage to past foes.
He said, "You're too small. Can you read lips?" He said it again. "You're too small. You're too small."
Devin Haney saying you're too small, you're too small.
He said it again. "You're too small. You're too small."
Now, a controversy erupted as fans and experts debated about whether the Austrian had helped Garcia win. One loud voice castigating Garcia was Victor Conte, a man jailed for money laundering and conspiracy to distribute steroids back in the early 2000s. Conte, creator of his own outfit, Balco, had provided PEDs to various athletes, including the boxer Sugar Shane Mosley. After his release, Conte continued working with supplements. No other sport dared open its doors to him.
I can't believe anybody even listens to this guy, anybody even quotes this guy. Victor Conte is a two-faced piece of shit.
Except for boxing. There, he began supplying various boxers, including Devin Haney. Conte became an advocate for stricter testing and was considered an authority on PEDs. Now, he went after Garcia, dispelling accusations that he'd worked with the testing organization, VADA, to hijack Garcia's tests. Within weeks of the controversy, an independent documentary titled Secrets Under Secrets premiered on YouTube. There, the anonymous narrator revealed a series of inconsistencies, which raised questions about Conte's involvement in boxing. For starters, Victor Conte's Balco clients never tested positive for PEDs. They won medals and fights, all while testing clean. The only way was when the feds sorted through Conte's trash can and found paperwork relating to banned substances. The caveat was also that Conte's designer PEDs might not have been illegal, since the testing agencies didn't know they existed, and thus were unable to confirm if they did indeed provide an unfair advantage. On top of this, Conte had and continued to emphasize that PED testing in boxing is ineffective in its current incarnation. A Netflix documentary, Untold Hall of Shame, revealed Conte as an ambitious character, hungry for attention and fame, both of which he's found via boxing.
I think it was his narcissistic personality that, Victor was like, no publicity is bad publicity. I remember the night he went on 2020. He was indicted, but the case hasn't been resolved yet. And we got a call from his defense attorney saying, I don't know what our guy's doing. He's going on 2020 tonight.
You will know that Marion Jones has been through 84 drug tests and has never failed a single one of them.
Well, I know that she was tested many times from the time frame that I worked with her, and she obviously passed all those drug tests, including the ones at the Olympic Games. So as I told you earlier, it's like taking candy from a baby.
So Victor administrated the drugs, then he gave the drug people the system on how to catch you now so that he can do something different, and that's something you can never take from a hustler, the hustle.
I knew that this was the most coveted of all, records and gold medals. So we kind of had a collective dream, and I was the mastermind, so to speak.
Similarly, trainer Virgil Hunter, whose fighter Andrew Ward once worked with Conte, repeated the same assertions, stating, "But look, Victor is a great man. And I don't even know if he'll mind me saying this, but at the same time, I felt that he has one flaw, and I feel that his flaw is his desire for attention, and his desire to be revered in the media exceeded and superseded logic in this situation." Devin Haney appeared in the Netflix documentary defending Conte.
Meet with Victor, then that's when people will come to me and say, oh, he's a cheater and he's gonna try to give you drugs, or he is giving you drugs and stuff like that. But I never really paid attention to it.
Why would Haney ignore the accusations against Conte? Is it because doing so would force him into an argument he can't win? As the drama ensued, Conte became more vocal on Twitter, constantly tagging Haney and Garcia, while simultaneously referring to Haney as "my guy."
Let's, for just a moment, talk about Devin Haney, my guy. My guy.
To recap, Conte, a man famous for concocting novel and undetectable PEDs, made his way into boxing, a sport with mediocre PED testing procedures, Moreover, by many accounts, Conte was a hustler, a man who admitted to wanting to be a part of something great, even if it came via cheating. He was also a man boastful of his misdeeds, even in the face of imprisonment. Could this man be trusted to continue working with athletes such as Haney? And if Conte were to be providing his designer PEDs, how would he be caught? And how would Devin Haney know whether Conte's substances fell within legal boundaries? Another bizarre detail emerged when it was revealed that Haney's younger brother had expected a positive PED test as per a vision presented by Allah.
Yes, I was on the prayer mat today and Allah was just telling me he's going to test positive for his drug test. Keeps going in my brain. He keeps saying he's going to test positive for his drug test. He's going to test positive for his drug test.
Was this spiritual revelation too coincidental? Then, the question of what constitutes cheating arose when the Secrets Under Secrets video focused on Haney's weight issues. There, it was revealed that Haney's fight night weight, clocked against Regis Prograis, had stood at over 160 pounds, meaning he'd rehydrated more than 20 pounds for a 140-pound bout. Moreover, the official weigh-in had occurred earlier than usual. Traditionally, weigh-ins were held in the afternoon, meaning the fighters had little over 24 hours to rehydrate. But here, it had taken place in the morning, meaning Haney had 36 hours to pack on more weight. This was not the first time he'd done so, as the WBC president, Mauricio Suleiman, had confirmed to Bill Haney's face that Devin used to rehydrate over 160 pounds back when he was a lightweight.
And your son, after the fight, after the weigh-in, the next day he was 24 pounds over the weight division. The next day when he fought, he was 20 or 24 pounds heavier than the day.
He was hydrated. You said he hydrated up 20 to 24
Absolutely.
pounds.
Bill Haney never denied it. Moreover, the documentary revealed Haney boasting about his size to previous opponents. Despite what Haney fans said, their fighter clearly saw his bulk as an advantage. The Haney fans then countered that this was a system in place by the commissions, and thus legally permitted. But they never once asked whether it should be permitted. The use of banning certain performance-enhancing drugs is applied because these may provide an unfair advantage and is thus considered cheating. This begs the question, if outweighing an opponent is an advantage, is it an unfair one? And should it be considered cheating? Some consider weight bullying as being a myth, but examples show how bigger boxers can absorb more punishment or hit harder on fight night. The subject remains debatable. Meanwhile, Ryan Garcia returned to acting like a maniac. There, he went on expletive-filled rants, demeaning race and religion. This led the World Boxing Council to suspend him. He was fine if the organization wished to punish him. After all, Garcia's online rant had been distasteful. However, the WBC appeared hypocritical for failing to punish Devin Haney for his own racial rant back in 2020.
I will never lose to a white boy in my life. I don't care what nobody got to say. Listen, can't no white boy beat me on any day of the week. Fight a white boy 10 times, I'm gonna beat him 10 times.
Moreover, the WBC never shunned lightweight contender Gervonta Tank Davis for running into a pregnant woman and then fleeing the scene. Did the WBC consider words more harmful than actions? Garcia, meanwhile, continued his disintegration. He went on to denigrate George Kambosos after the Australian loss to Lomachenko. This led to a back and forth between the fighters, culminating with Garcia going after his foe's wife. When called out on his boorish behavior, Garcia apologized and claimed he'd been joking.
Well, we're buying.
Another boxer, super middleweight contender Caleb Plant, went at Garcia, asking why he'd taken the Austrian. Garcia failed to hold back. Plant, no stranger to physical confrontations, vowed to make Garcia pay, though he did so with mixed success. Garcia retorted by claiming to have engaged in coitus with Plant's wife. But Garcia was not the only person self-imploding. Months after the bout, Haney remained inactive, turning down fights which he claimed were beneath him. Then, he sued Ryan Garcia, claiming the defeat had negatively impacted his worth as an attraction. Many doubted the case would go anywhere. Haney did manage to fight, though not in the ring, as he and his friends attempted to batter a carny. Despite outnumbering the individual, Haney and his posse failed. Then, in an interview with retired super middleweight Andre Ward, Haney admitted his circle of friends had shrunk after the Garcia assault. As of this video's release, there remain rumblings about a potential Haney-Garcia rematch with big money involved. Would it be enough, however, to wash away the ugliness served by both fighters? In the end, it was fitting that the first bout had officially been ruled a no contest, for this was a story devoid of a winner.